Welcome everyone to Myth Informed. Tonight you have Fritz Blandone, to my left, and Sean Frasick, co-founders of Mythicist Milwaukee and MythCon. And we are excited. 2 weeks away from MythCon. Fritz, are you extremely tired yet?
I'm extremely exhausted, but right now it's one of those exhausts where I'm going to power through, and it's going to be awesome. I'm studying for a final, and when I'm ready for that final, I'm going to cram, and I'm going to do awesome during the final, and then right afterwards, I'm going to forget what happened.
We'll see how awesome. Working till midnight, though, it's not fun, is it? It really isn't.
No, my feet always hurt.
Yeah. So. The day, and actually this year at MythCon, we do have a sponsor, and we're really excited for that. The Liberalists International Association sponsored us this year, and tonight we are joined by Ben Brown and Shane Armstrong. Ben is the operations lead for the Liberals UK, previously the university lead, a founding member of the organization, and writer of the initial role structure. Currently studying for his finals or his
No, I've done those.
Yep.
I've done those, and I've got my degree.
Yeah. And he publicly spoke at the March of on Downing Street, and is director of the Liberalists UK. And Shane Armstrong, chair of public relations, PR. That's always fun, especially in the political world, and a member of the board of directors for the Liberalists International Association from Montreal. Guys, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Most definitely. That's 1 in the morning.
Well, it's 1 in the morning over there. All right.
Yeah.
I can't thank you guys enough.
Again, shit,
I just want to.
Right. It is.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
man, thanks for
yeah,
staying
for
up
sure.
With us.
What is that? A Red Bull? Do they even allow Red Bull in Europe? Are there chemicals in Red Bull that are illegal in Europe?
If you, funny enough, when you go to do the self scan at Tesco to buy energy drinks, now they'll ID you to see if you're 16.
Oh wow!
Wow, that's incredible. I definitely got a little taste of some of the things that are, I mean, outside of GMOs and stuff like that. But I ended up when I was in Europe having to deal with pink eye, which I think I dealt with or got, like going through the subways. I won't name cities because I don't want to offend any cities. But I think the subway system gave me pink eye, and I went through.
That's what it was.
I went through. I went through a couple of different pharmacies over there, and they weren't doing anything, and then I had to research why are my eyes still red. I found out that that chemical inside of our eye drops over here in the U.S. are legal. Meanwhile, they're illegal in Europe. So I was curious to know if sugar was allowed in Europe.
Was it the London Underground? I have to ask. Was it in London?
Right.
So
no, it's not the Underground.
So Liberalists. So what we know of Liberalists kind of was coined, from our understanding, by Sargon of Akkad. And he had mentioned, let's start a movement of people that still hold classical liberal values and promote free speech and aren't afraid of comedy. And, hello?
I think you guys cut out.
So you guys have been like how it's been transitioning.
Yeah, I think you cut out there for a second. But so if I can field this one, Ben.
Yeah, I had a cut out, so you carry on.
So to explain, initially in January, Sargon released a video. I believe it was called "What We Can Do in 2018." Where he sort of outlined a movement in general that he defined as the Liberalists. It's a name that's been around before then, but Carl suggested that we adopt it because it promotes liberalism in general. He outlined 7 principles for us to rally around, so to speak, those being freedom of speech, blind justice, democracy, self-reliance, economic freedom, individual rights, and secularism. I can imagine you guys are quite happy about that last one.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a movement designed to focus around those 7 principles and to promote them in, generally speaking, the modern-day Western societies as they become more and more under attack by, shall we say, institutional bureaucracy, shall we say. Now, the movement has come, I would say, a reasonable distance since then. Carl has been very hands-off in letting us sort ourselves out. The LIA started, I want to say, generally in around March, April, started to formulate and come together as a structure where people could join and find resources available for them to help create their own regional groups all across the West and across the world. We've been going for a few months now. We've officially become incorporated in the state of Iowa as a 501c3. So we're an official NPO now. And it is our goal to try and help as many regions across the world promote liberalism in whatever way they see fit according to their culture and political climate. The only thing that everyone has to agree on is that we uphold the 7 principles.
With those 7 principles, are you seeing any differences between what liberalism used to be called, perhaps in the 90s or late 90s, to what liberalism is now, to the point where my form of liberalism is now considered classical liberal?
Well, there's I would say probably since the 70s or the 80s, I think it probably started in the Reagan era of U.S. politics, where the term liberal started to be used as sort of a dirty word that got associated with, I want to say, socialism in general. I think that's largely because of positions that the Democrats started taking, where they became more economically left over time, arguing for bigger and bigger government. I'd say that was probably around the time that the terms started getting bandied together with that sort of movement. Now, obviously, there are going to be different groups of liberalists who disagree over how much government is too much and where the line should be drawn for economic freedom. But generally speaking, we don't support socialism, so to speak, or I don't want to speak for all liberalists, but socialism is something that we generally try to trend away from. We believe that economic freedom for every individual is important, and we also hold to the idea that individual property ownership is a very important ideal that shouldn't be infringed on. It's actually part of Article 17 of the UN Charter of Rights. Not to say that the UN should be treated as a necessary authority on things, but
sure. So capitalism is definitely something that that is pushed under the liberalist values. Are there? Do you see a range within the liberalist in terms of libertarianism or not?
So I can jump on this and explain it even further. So Liberalist UK sort of started as a there was the main liberalist Facebook group, as it were, and there are a lot of English people that felt that the main liberalist group couldn't really be a good example for representing British interests, because there are a lot of English people that would class themselves as capitalists, but they actually quite like the NHS. And there are people within our movement that are completely pro NHS. There are some people that are pro reforming it and privatizing some of it. And there are some that are completely libertarian and want to abolish it completely and bring in private healthcare. But the key thing here is in terms of defining economic freedom within that, you've got people that believe that economic freedom should be defined as having a certain level of social responsibility within a developed society. Where you can actually enable people to be more empowered to be able to seek out and grow, regardless of what cards they've been dealt. So it's kind of understanding what you would class as the bottom rung for society, and what's an acceptable bottom rung, and that's often debated between sort of the more, say, social types versus the more libertarian types.
there's a lot of open discussion in the liberalists, and we certainly don't all agree on every issue. It's just
Yeah.
making sure that we all agree on the principles that are important to guide us. That said, we're not really a strictly political movement. We don't have a party, and we don't at current have any plans for forming any political party. Certainly not as an NPO within the LIA.
Not in LibUK either. We want to stick to sort of more focusing on issues more than anything.
No, it makes sense, and it's funny because it kind of draws parallels to kind of how we started in atheism. And atheism is a general concept, at least in the West. The new atheist movement really was kind of it was given a lot of momentum after 2001 with September 11th, and you had all of these different speakers and organizations start forming, and all these events. And it wasn't long. I mean, this kind of seems like it's human nature. It wasn't long before, you know, people within the new atheist community, if you will, started having different ways of doing things. Like you had your firebrands that would love to go out and yell and scream at people. Then you had more of your passive aggressive people who were more focused on different tactics. And then you had the science people, and you had, you know, just the hardcore atheists. So I see some parallels with that in the liberalist movement, at least when it comes to organizing. Like, take us through like what some of the challenges you guys have gone through and some of the success stories you've had.
Do you want to start, or shall I start?
You can start if you want.
It's a loaded question.
So with the UK movement, we've had a little bit of friction because there's been a bit of difference of opinion between the types of activism that members within wanted to partake in. So some people have gone down the route of wanting to support UKIP with the War Plan Purple concept. However, because LibUK from the beginning has focused on polling its membership to see where everyone sits on the political compass spectrum, and we've had pretty much everyone is below the horizontal axis, but we've got a wide range of people going across the sort of the vertical spectrum from left to right. In the management of LibUK, we sort of decided we didn't want to be a party supporting movement because we'd be alienating some of our own members. That caused a bit of a crack in terms of the people within the UK. So there's a separate movement called War Plan Purple that's kind of doing their thing, while we're kind of trying to go down the slightly more sort of should we say, socially acceptable, palatable route, where we're trying to sort of appear more moderate and more reasoning with the general public, where some people are going more sort of in your face with the sort of the memes and the UKIP stuff. So that's kind of one example, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, if you would you say then that the individuals that would consider themselves, I guess, maybe a part of UKIP, or I guess what would be freedom of expression totalitarians? You know, I can't remember exactly how it was framed recently.
Free speech absolutists.
Free speech absolutists, exactly.
I'd say.
Go ahead.
The way to look at it is that both groups are free speech absolutists. It's more that one group wants to kind of be the more sort of offensive and in your face type, where from our angle, we want to go down the path of least resistance. We want to appeal to everyone and sort of make the point that these principles are good for everyone in every party, no matter what political viewpoint you come from. And we felt that to go down the route of supporting UKIP would be alienating everyone that wouldn't want to vote for UKIP.
Okay, so do you? So I'm looking here. I'm not familiar with Europe, or I should say English Parliament, but I do see here a couple of terms that use the word liberal, and so I see here the Liberal Party and Liberal Democrats. Does that have anything to do with your movement as your organization of liberalists trying to, you know, kind of be a little bit immersed into each of those groups?
No, so basically, the Liberal Democrats have been a party for quite a while now. They were in the coalition government when Nick Clegg was basically David Cameron didn't get a majority or enough of a majority to get in power. So Nick Clegg joined them, and they've always been the sort of the middle ground party where they'll appeal to. They were trying to appeal to students when Nick Clegg got in with the whole thing of free, no tuition fees and all that sort of stuff. But as a party, they kind of sit between the left and right quite often. They veered sort of more to the left and more down the route of pro-Remain with the Brexit thing, to the point where I think that they wanted to actually have a second referendum and all that sort of stuff. So they're not really, as far as Lib UK is concerned, we would be more opposed to the Liberal Democrats at the moment.
They've sort of abandoned the principles of liberalism in the sense that they don't really seem to abide by democracy or by freedom of speech anymore. If they're willing to try to eradicate the results of a referendum and then hold another one, it doesn't really hold to the idea of democratic process.
That's my perspective on it, definitely.
Okay, so it seems like there's a little bit of is there some entities of social justice activism within that that community then?
Yes. The problem with the UK at the moment is there isn't really a party that's worth voting for. The Green Party have got a major social justice element in the form of likes of Caroline Lucas and so forth, who's I think, if I remember correctly, she's still on the Women and Equalities Committee. The Conservative Party are they've been very pro-censorship. So Theresa May was behind one of the porn ban laws that went in a while ago, where they banned things like face sitting and female orgasms and stuff. That was the sort of thing they were going for.
Can you explain face sitting for me? That's a new term for me. Face sitting.
Face sitting.
Like,
so basically,
a special term to me.
So basically, if you would like to perform like a bit of cunnilingus on a girl, then you can get her to lay a place on your face. You know, just take a seat.
It is exactly what I'm thinking of. I've just never heard it as face sitting before.
Interesting. Well, I just wanted to touch on what you guys were saying earlier as far as tactics, and I think tactics are extremely important within. I'll just bring it back to atheism. Within our world, our old world, before they kicked us out, you did have like I was saying, the firebrand atheists, and those were more of the types, I think, what you were explaining, getting in your face, protesting, protesting churches and stuff. And I never really liked that that take, because I don't, I think when you're trying to be offensive, just offensive, I don't think you're really winning anybody over. So I agree with your guys' take on trying to take more of the middle of the road. Let's have conversations. Let's talk about these things. I think you're going to win more people over that way. And so I definitely, I give you guys kudos for going down that road. But as far as like success stories, we didn't really get into that. Like, what are some success stories you guys have had as a movement?
I think the biggest thing for us in the UK is the March on Downing Street. I mean, we had, I've seen estimates between 400 and 600 people, I think, and we were only a movement for a couple of months at this point. So we had, with the event, we had, Sargon gave a speech there. I gave one. Mark, who was the previous marketing lead, gave one there. We also had Helen Dale from the, I always get confused with the Spectator or the Observer. I'm sure it's the Spectator. She's a fantastic writer, actually. And we also had Tim Poole turn up as well, which is pretty cool. And we had, I don't know if you guys have seen Jonathan Pye, the sort of satire news presenter online, but we had his writer down as well, Andrew Doyle, I can't forget his surname now. And we had a massive amount of people that all came for the march, and the pictures. I mean, have you seen the pictures from our march?
Oh, I've seen pictures that where Sargon was speaking. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen the march itself? How many people were there?
No, I haven't. No,
I didn't see that. No.
There's some great footage of it, and the pictures. One of my colleagues actually put up a picture and did it in the sort of the black and white brownie old sort of filter, and it looked like we're all marching into Auschwitz or something. It was very depressing because we all had the tape over our mouths, and it was quite an emotional experience, actually. It was seeing the public sort of staring at us. We silently marched through London to bagpipes playing a sort of solemn tune. Yeah, that was a big thing, I think.
Sure. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at it over here. while I try to find it. So I know that you initially, both of you had indicated that you're not trying to really align yourself specifically with a party. And the question that I asked was, I guess, trying to find a way if there's any way that your fingers are, within many different groups so that you're not alienating people. But I guess my question then becomes, as a moderate, or as your organization tries to become a moderate, and try to find that that avenue of least resistance so that it's socially acceptable. I would say if those are the values that, if maybe it's those 7 values that you expressed, if that's moderate and that's socially acceptable, why doesn't a party just adhere to those and just gather a whole bunch of followers? If that's the path of least resistance.
The problem is with a lot of parties, especially in the UK, I think that there's a social justice has crept in through the back door, because we in England like to think that we care about our people, and we're very tolerant in our society. The problem is we've been so tolerant, we've been tolerating intolerance. We've been tolerating the police have been scared to report the mass rape of young girls because of the nationality and religious group of the people that were grooming them. The problem is in the UK is whenever you go out against any particular group, it's considered unsavoury and it's considered wrong to speak out against them. There are also moderates that come from these communities that do try to speak out, but the problem is their voices are often not heard, or they're just kind of, Maajid Nawaz is a good example. Maajid Nawaz is on LBC. He's a lovely chap. From everything I've seen of what he does and what he puts out, it's very moderate. The problem is people don't listen to him. Generally, in terms of the people that listen to LBC listen to him, but in terms of the people that are actually in politics at the moment, they're not really listening to what's being said in terms of what has to be done. You've also got the really loud groups out there, who like Britain First and so forth, who are going against grooming gangs and things in the worst possible way, because essentially they're going after Muslims. They're not going after the grooming people. They're going after Muslims in general and trying to blame the Islamic communities. And they're not doing it very clearly. So there's a natural thing in Britain to kind of defend those people who they're going after, because it looks like the far right's on the rise and all that sort of stuff. I think the main issue over here is people don't necessarily know where the problem is, because whenever someone says, well, it's Muslims and it's this and it's that, there's a natural desire to say, well, how dare you go after these communities? That's bigotry. That's you're alienating them and so forth. I think that really we've just gotten to a bit of a stalemate over here.
Yeah, I think it's sad. I think it's sad that you can't really criticize ideas, because it seems like right now the criticism of ideas seems like your population's afraid of being called a bigot and a racist. I mean, Maajid Nawaz, an ex-Muslim, luckily, he recently won a lawsuit against the Southern Poverty Law Center, but he seems extremely moderate and rational to me, and it's very sad to me that your society out there in England is not quote unquote listening to him, except for the small bubble that listens to his podcast. Do you see and do you feel where you're at right now, the fact that there are really 2 court systems, one that the regular European or England English the secular court, those that the normal established English population needs to follow, and then those for the new migrants of Islamic descent, for Sharia courts.
So the Sharia course and the Sharia thing, that's the way that works is a bit odd from what I understand. So they don't have much legal power as such. It's if any, I think you have to volunteer to adhere to their court system. So it's not, if I remember correctly, they don't actually have any proper legal power. So the people that do subject themselves to going through Sharia courts generally is they're culturally Muslim, so it's a choice thing from what I understand.
But do you see the English court systems kind of backing down to them?
I think really it's not that. I don't think that they're backing down to the Sharia courts. I don't think it's the Sharia court thing that's the issue. I think it's more of a, I think it's down to our policing really that's the issue at the moment in terms of actually investigating a lot of these matters. I don't think, yes, not so much the courts. Because I mean, the grooming gangs have been, when they've gone to court, they have been prosecuted. There have been people put in prison. So it's not a court issue, it's a policing issue. But I think a lot of it, to be perfectly honest though, I think a lot of the issues that are coming about at the moment are also down to funding. I mean, the police have had some massive funding cuts, and I have some thoughts as to that might be why they're prosecuting people for hate crimes on the internet when it comes down to Facebook and Twitter and things like that. I have a funny feeling that it might be just a method of keeping their policing figures up more than anything.
I'm reminded of the Chelsea Russell case and the Marcus Meekin or Count Dankula case.
Well, precisely. I mean, when it came down to the Chelsea Russell case, the funny part about that is the fact that there was no civilian complainant. It was a police officer that found the offending Instagram post, and then found someone within the force to get offended by it, and then they found PC Dominic Walker, who, happened to have had a brother who was murdered in an alleged racially motivated attack. So of course she was going to be offended, and she now heads up the racial hate unit within Merseyside. So they're clearly trying to go after the numbers there. I think they've cut off.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys are speaking, but your audio seems to be cut out. Oh, I'm seeing it's muted currently, maybe?
Is it muted?
Seems so in the Hangout.
Oh.
Like on the portrait.
Is it left the scene? Well, for anyone who's wondering, we're from the Liberalist International Association, Liberalist UK, here for the to celebrate the MythCon that's coming on this year, and the hosts happen to have sound issues.
The wonders of the internet.
Precisely. It's.
Oh well.
I want to. Wait. I can see hand gestures. I can see hand gestures.
Yeah. I guess they'd like us to keep going.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
are we back? Are we good now? Are we good? Did we come in?
I can hear you. Yeah. I can hear you now. I can hear you loud and clear.
I'm so sorry about that. Yeah. Our technical issues.
For some reason, Google Hangouts decided to mute us for absolutely no reason.
Sorry about that. We got censored just now, guys. Sorry.
Censored by Google. But I wanted to bring up the cultural power in criticizing these ideas. We also have to MythCon. We have Stephen Knight coming. He is the godless spell checker, and he's been. If you guys don't know him, definitely you guys want to meet him, talk to him. He was at the free speech day, interviewing Sargon, and.
Oh, you guys have gotten muted again.
There we go.
Nope.
All right, I think we're back.
Yeah.
You just have to keep unplugging shit over here for whatever reason. So he's coming to MythCon, and he's been focused on Islam for a long time. He's been a huge critic of Islam, and even he's getting scared on his podcast and for his personal well-being to challenge Islam, which is really interesting. And one of the things you guys had mentioned is the Draw Muhammad Day. You wanted to talk about that. That's something we've been doing in the atheist circles for a long time, and you guys had mentioned that there's something going on with that right now.
Okay, so in the Netherlands, I'm sure many viewers are aware of a politician who has had his name in the press a lot recently, Geert Wilders. He's the leader of one of the right-wing parties in the Netherlands and Flanders. He announced recently he wanted to start a Draw Muhammad campaign. And there were huge riots in Pakistan over it, such to the point that he had to shut it down, so to speak.
It's amazing that they would riot in their own country and destroy their own country for something that's going on elsewhere.
There was also, I think, 2 stabbings in the Netherlands over it. They stabbed, I think, 2 American citizens who were on vacation there.
So let me ask related to that. So again, going back to just the idea of the moderate platform that you want to attain. Do you see the ability to draw Muhammad as a moderate thing that should be allowed, that really shouldn't be a big deal to those?
So,
or how do you see it?
I put a picture of Muhammad up on Twitter when this all happened, in response to the Pakistani pop star or whatever that said that he should be hung, I think it was, or that said that people that do it should be hung. So I replied with a picture of a stick man and put Muhammad next to it.
Personally speaking, back in my more firebrandy days, when I was a young upstart little atheist, I took part in the first and second Draw Muhammad Day campaigns.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the organization or the liberalists in general, but I certainly feel that it should be a right of anyone to draw whatever they want. I think limiting what someone can create is a limitation on free speech. Your art is your speech in some regards, and saying that someone should be forced to not draw something because others find it offensive is objectionable at the least.
Yeah, for me, one of the things that was important for me to go visit when I was in Paris this summer was to make it to the old Charlie Hebdo location, just kind of pay my respects to individuals that lost their lives for something that I view as not enough for somebody to be murdered over. So I definitely made my way over there.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because in Islam, like that it just kind of showcases the maturity of that religion. If a lot of people don't know that it was actually illegal to draw Jesus in the early centuries of Jesus, and obviously with the Last Supper and things like that, that started becoming more the norm. But it was extremely taboo to draw pictures of Jesus, and there is something to being able to draw Muhammad and becoming more of an enlightened religion. And the fact that they keep arguing against that's just going to keep them in kind of in a dark age of time. And violence over drawings, I mean, that makes absolutely no sense to me. We do, before we go into, we do have a super chat from someone. I don't know if this is a troll or what, but this is someone asking, can you speak to the known anti-Semitism inside the liberalist movement? This seems to be tolerated by you under the idea of free speech. Not sure what that pertains to, but
I think this sounds like a play on Labour.
Yeah, that might be a bit of a joke regarding the current Labour scandal in the UK.
Yeah, that sounds what it is. Yeah, definitely.
Because it doesn't sound like you guys, I mean, if you guys are for drawing Muhammad and secular values, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to
No,
me.
it's a joke on the Labour thing, definitely. The thing is, when it comes down to drawing Muhammad and stuff, we in the UK we tamed our Christianity over the years, so we're left with a very sort of mild-mannered Church of England today. But the Church of England and a lot of religion in the UK bloody hated the likes of Monty Python. I mean, The Life of Brian is a brilliant movie. It was the best part was it was just silly. It wasn't, they weren't really saying much, but in terms of their message, they were just doing something silly and a bit fun and a bit offensive. And it was a great movie. And then you have Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, where you have them all singing in the church, "Oh Lord, please don't burn us, don't roast or toast your flock, or whatever, don't put us on the barbecue," and blah blah blah. And the thing is, this was I was with my friend Martin the other day, and he was saying to me that was what church was like for him in those years, where you'd have all these songs and talking about how, "Oh Lord, we're not even worth the crumbs that fall off of your table," and all this sort of stuff. These were things that they actually said in church.
Yeah.
And so drawing Muhammad and taking the mickey out of Islam, I think is very much needed within the UK, because I think that's what we would do to treat them as if they were the same as everyone else.
Correct?
Yeah, I agree. Do you feel like the majority of society in England supports that or feels that way? Maybe they do. They just don't want to express it.
I think they're scared too, because I think the problem is all the things that happened with Charlie Hebdo and so forth, and all of the attacks that have occurred as well. I mean, you had was it the London Bridge thing and all those sorts of bits, and also you have things going on in Calais, not Calais, Nice with the truck. I think the problem is that people are letting these horrendous attacks scare them into not doing anything. I think the police are doing the same. I think that really attempts to rile up the community or whatever will be quite quickly stopped. I mean, one of the things that I've been told by someone who whose relative works in counter-terrorism is all these attacks that you hear, but you never hear about all the attacks that never occur. And the police are constantly working to prevent all these attacks from happening. But if there was a widespread Draw Mohammed Day thing in England, I think the police would be very afraid of what could happen. Which, if anything, it just sends an even more, even stronger message to the bigots who would just go after every Muslim, really, because it says, well, careful with those people. You don't want to upset them because they might react badly. It's like, well, how are we supposed to get on and treat each other like the same as British citizens if we can't take the piss?
Yeah, it seems like what's being lost for a lot of individuals in our society is that you should be responsible for your actions. So I mean, if somebody reacts in a violent way, I don't believe that if the other act isn't a physically violent thing. I mean, because violence is now described in many different ways by, depending on who's speaking on violence, because to some words are violence, which is why free speech is scary to some individuals. But if you react violently, physically, to me, I feel like that's what should be held accountable.
Well, that's the thing. I think that people have become very sensitive to certain forms of belief system. I think it's also partially down to a victim complex. I mean, if you look at, it's a lot of it's come from university culture as well. We have to admit this. It's come from this thing of, well, I hate using this slur, but it's right. Social justice sort of type people that say, oh, you can't go after these people; they're a minority, and so that you Islamophobic and all this sort of stuff. I think it's somehow it's put Islam in a position where it gets treated almost like it's a race now, even though it's not. And people haven't haven't realised that actually this is a switcheroo that's going on. It's like, well, how dare you criticise these people because they wear a hijab? It's like, well, It used to be that wearing a hijab was enforced within certain cultures to demean women. It does, and that's not to say there aren't women that wear it because they want to wear it, and it's to them it's a symbol of empowerment and their choice. But that's not what it originally meant. That's not how it was perceived within society. So now it's kind of seen wrong to know, it's seen as wrong to remember these facts and to criticize these garments and things like that as these facts, because there's this whole thing of these new moderates that kind of jump in the way of those that you want to criticize, especially in universities. I think that it's become so protected now by the people that want to think that there's no problem with it at all, that actually they jump in the way when you're trying to criticize the people that are actually the problem.
I think, personally, a big problem is that the difference fundamentally between Christianity and Islam is that Christianity went through a Renaissance period where a lot of Enlightenment thinkers sort of developed the ideas behind a very liberal society, and in that regard brought forward sort of a principled liberal approach to the Christian religion. It goes as far back probably as the Greeks and Aquinas, but there's been no fundamental movement in Islam that is similar. They're still preaching the same religion they've always preached to a large degree. And until there is sort of a renaissance in Islamic thought where they come to understand that the individual is the smallest minority and the most important body by which any law should be governed, this issue is going to keep happening.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's, with what you guys are doing and what the liberalist movement's doing in general is very important, because having these conversations and being able to challenge things, ideologies, is extremely important. I mean, fun. You know, mostly I think people they typically want to be good people. So you're right that they do see Islam as a race, which is completely incorrect, and then they also see Islam as being a minority religion, which again is extremely incorrect. But when you have these perceptions, you don't want to seem like you're a bigot, but that also comes from being completely uninformed. And one of the funny things is there's a German researcher working on the Quran. The way the Quran was built, the Quran wasn't written by Muhammad. It actually wasn't written until centuries after Muhammad supposedly lived. We actually don't. We think there's good evidence that Muhammad actually is a mythical figure that was a composite character of various warlords that lived in that time. But regardless, the Quran comes centuries after Muhammad supposedly lived. So there's all these different versions of the Quran, and there's this German scholar right now that's working on what can be debated as one of the oldest versions of the Quran. And the whole headscarf actually is a potential mistranslation. It actually, instead of being a headscarf, they're thinking the translation now is a chastity belt. So instead of the hijab, Muslim women should actually be wearing a chastity belt. And then also the mistranslation of the 72 virgins that you get translates closer to 72 dates, like a date tree. So you actually don't get the virgins either. You just get some dates to eat after but again, these conversations and this information comes from having these conversations, and that's one of the things that I was really sad. I was saddened by the atheist community with MythCon last year was the fact that they decided to take a stand against having open conversations, and we're really excited to have you guys coming to kind of be that beacon with us to say we should have tough conversations. We should be challenging these things. What are you guys looking forward to at MythCon this year? Like, why did you guys decide to sponsor? We're really happy to have you. Like, what are some of the things you're seeing that you want to support?
Oh, just there's a whole variety of all the speeches between the debate between Sargon and
Richard Carrier.
Yes, yeah, Carrier. Sargon and Carrier. That's going to be an interesting one. That's regarding social justice and its effects on society in general, I think. Or am I misremembering? There's that. There's a variety of speeches. I myself am interested to hear Karen Straughn's take on things currently, as a fellow Canadian at least. And we're also there to also support our movement, and we'll obviously, for the viewers at home, we'll have a booth, and we'll be promoting both ourselves and the regional groups whom we help represent there. So there's a lot to look forward to, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the other gentlemen from our organization who'll be going.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you guys, and another thing that you guys are combating right now, or at least shining the light on. I don't know how much power you have to combat this, but the passing of Articles 11 and 13 in the UK. Can you talk to us a little bit about them?
It's EU.
Yeah, it's in the EU in general. EU. Actually, if the UK does go through with Brexit, it won't be the UK largely, unless they're passed before Brexit. But that's a whole other debacle that it's going to take some time to get into and sort out later. So yeah, Article 11 and Article 13, the EU link tax and the copyright directive. Those are two very big issues for the internet in general right now. Obviously, we stand in opposition against them. They were passed through the EU Parliament earlier today, actually. There is another vote coming up in the spring where they will be sorted out for their last approval after some discussions in what I believe is a shadow cabinet. I'm not entirely versed in the way that the UN works completely, so if I'm incorrect in that regard, feel free to let me know. But as far as I'm aware, there's a vote in the spring. There'll be the last chance to strike this down in its entirety, or else the EU in general will suffer essentially they'll be suffering under the force of EU arbitration, where anything that is posted to the internet must go through a filter that is run by an AI algorithm to strike down any copyrighted material.
Yeah, Google's
Yeah.
been so good at that.
Yeah, it's going to be so inaccurate. And, you know, I was personally concerned here in the U.S. when, you know, the laws on net neutrality, you know, were becoming to be overturned. This seems like another, you know, like exponent, you know, further on that. And you combine the two. Is there issues of net neutrality as well being seen within the EU as well for these two, you know, different I should say these attack moves by those in power for you know not enabling, you know, startups or those to communicate their thoughts freely to do so? I mean, are these two things coming together? Net neutrality and then these articles, you know, from 11 and 13.
I have to claim ignorance in terms of the EU with net neutrality stuff. I think we have that, but still, I don't think there's any issue with that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shane.
I'm also not certain regarding net neutrality in the EU in general. I think there are some protections in place to prevent predatory practices from ISPs, but I couldn't speak to them necessarily. I need to brush up on my my current standing EU legislation.
Yeah, well, I think just having it go through a can you imagine having anything you post go through a filter to see if it's? I mean, you know, that unfortunately that's kind of what, you know, people like to bring up the I wouldn't even rape you bullshit with Sargon, and we've covered this 800 million times. But I mean, that's kind of what he was warning against with, you know, if somebody starts taking control of the internet, you know, that's it. You know, you're going to lose some voices that are important, that are seen as taboo today, but actually you have, you know, good information to share.
What do you think the end goals are for Articles 11 and 13? Your opinions on why it is that this is even being passed?
Well, it's, I mean, the people that are really going to benefit from it, from what I understand, are the big corporate entities. I mean, if you're a small startup, you're not necessarily going to have the power to ensure that your assets are safe. But the people that are big, you know, big corporate entities, they're definitely going to be able to ensure that everything sort of is checked through a filter for their rights and that, to be paid for things and have things removed. So it's, I mean, from what I've only recently sort of brushed up on this, so I'm still sort of new to the topic. But from what I understand, they've attempted to push this through multiple times. I think this is the second time they tried to push it through now. There was like a whole bunch of amendments that were suggested to it, and certain you know, criteria to be kind of put onto it to make it less broad legislation. And every single time they tried to suggest an amendment to the legislation, it was shot down by the EU. So it's generally the people that are going to benefit from it are the people that want to have more control of what we see on the internet. And the people with the power to actually enforce that.
Interesting. Yeah, then we got another super chat from Critters Buggin. He's giving us a lot of money tonight. The creeping wave of anarcho-liberalists will win.
Anarcho-liberalists. That's a great term.
Is there an anarcho-liberalist?
What does that mean to you?
I
don't know what that means.
I'm not entirely certain, but I assume they're speaking a little bit towards sort of the anarcho, the full anti-establishment movement, so to speak. I don't know if they're serious.
Gotcha.
Most liberalists are willing to admit that there is a necessity of the state. It's just the degree to which the state is necessary.
Yeah.
Precisely, yeah.
Well, my suggestion, just going through, you know, breaks and divides and things like that. I mean, with the liberalist movement in general, I think, you know, you guys will definitely get more done together. So I think there's a lot that you guys agree with and agree on. I think you guys will focus on that. And unfortunately, because we're all human, sometimes the littlest details. I mean, you know, look at how many different sects of Christianity there are. I mean, you know, one sect believes Jesus wore sandals, one believes he didn't wear sandals, and, you know, like they're fighting and killing each other. So, you know, I think you should definitely, you know, focus on the positives. And, you know, as a movement, especially with you guys growing and gaining momentum, I think there's a lot there. And, you know, like, you know, coming to MythCon and doing the events in the UK and, start standing up to some of these things that are coming up. I mean, do you guys have anything else like on the radar right now that you're focused on?
So here in the UK, we're focusing on the Chelsea Russell case. So that will be in November. I'm going to be going up to the court to actually witness the hearing, because there's a hearing that's going on. She's been convicted for daring to share lyrics on Instagram. How dare she? So we're going up there. We've also had some contact with a couple of organisations. So I'm in contact with some members of a group called Students for Liberty. And I met this chap called Danny, who organised the Sargon Yaron Brook event.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And Rucka was
yeah. Well, believe it or not, well, I say organised it. It was his society he's a part of. But the chap who was actually on the stage, that's Danny, and he's got a new thing starting up. It's uni free speech or something. I forgive me, Dan, if you're on this. I've forgotten the name. It's past midnight, but. We've been speaking to him, but we were also talking to Quilliam, or a member of Quilliam. I had a meeting with a chap called David Tubay.
Yeah, that's Majid's. Majid's.
Yeah. So I went for a curry with David Tubay from Quilliam, who's the new policy director, and we're and also I've got another contact who's a lobbyist, or has been a lobbyist in Parliament. So at the moment, in terms of what we've got in the pipeline, we've got the Chelsea thing coming up, but we're trying to sort of lay the groundwork for a more sort of grassroots activism and community activism sort of movement. So we're looking at universities and having active liberalist events in universities in the UK, whilst also putting having sort of marches and protests and things for the things that sort of resonate with the liberalist principles. But we're looking at more positive activism than anything, where we actually look at the politicians that do stand for the principles that we hold dear, and actually voicing our support for them as they support the principles. So we're looking small scale, but then over time, hopefully, it will build momentum and it will grow as a community thing. So that's our end, at least in the UK. I can't speak for the LIA.
The LIA in general right now, we're largely focused on making sure we have everything ready for our MythCon booth and presentation. But following that, we've been in discussion with the Liberalists of North Ireland, trying to sort out the anti-blasphemy, the anti-blasphemy law referendum that is currently going on there. Following that, there have been suggestions in the group so far to start working on a larger and broader scope of the Article 11 and Article 13 campaigns, so that we can put out some more work in that regard, probably some promotional material, do some activism, get together some protests if possible for certain regional groups. If we can help support them in doing that, that'd be probably our immediate focus going forward for now. There's also been some work with the Canadian group, trying to get them sorted. Trying to think. There's been support for the Spanish and the Brazilian groups as well, trying to get them incorporated and sorted out. So we've got a lot on our plate right now, trying to sort out how to build movements around the world and get some traction going.
That's incredible. I was going to ask you a little bit earlier, and now I have 3 questions that I want to ask, and I hope we can get to them. Where do you see the liberalist movement, growing, or where are the pockets in the world where you're seeing, a growth in either the search of the term or membership of the term, or of the idea around the world?
Okay, so currently our 2 biggest groups are the USA and the UK. But we've also been looking into Australia, Brazil, North Ireland. There's a decent coalition of folks in the Netherlands and Flanders, as well as Canada. We're starting to see support. I don't know if you've heard, but Maxime Bernier is planning on starting a new political party after splitting off from the Conservatives. That's very anti-identity politics. With that, he apparently picked up support from something like 17% of the country, which is about 6 million people.
Wow.
So there is support for the idea and the movement in general. It's just tapping into that, letting people know who we are, where we are, how they can get in contact with us.
I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the main sort of source of support we're going to get is when people realise that actually we're living in tribalist times at the moment, and I know that quite a few people get sucked into their sort of side of the spectrum. So I mean, for me, I was someone who was an avid watcher of the Young Turks for years, and then I saw them going after Sam Harris, and I was thinking, oh. Well, maybe these guys are a bit crazy. Maybe I don't like them anymore, and that was kind of what broke my conditioning in terms of watching them. And I think there's a lot of people that are in that situation where they're realizing that the group they've kind of sided with may not have all the answers, and actually maybe they do the same things that their so-called enemies do. And I think what we're going to find eventually is we're going to offer the moderate path to tackling all of these issues and answering all of the questions that people want to have answered. I mean, the Islamic issue is one perfect example, because we have the likes of Majid Nawaz, who are a rarity in terms of public voices, walking straight down the middle in terms of, yes, there are issues within the religion. However, it's not right as well to be an ask to everyone that has the same label. And I think that's going to be our thing. We're going to be their social justice warrior sort of side of things, where they just try and put everyone into categories in the same way as the far right would. So I think that really we're going to see more growth as people start sort of getting sick of tribalist politics. I think that's where people are just going to filter into a more moderate path, and everyone's going to cool down eventually.
I think the activism is extremely important. I think the education that comes from that also is just as important. I would like you to. There are two different topics, and each of you spoke to one, and I would like for you to explain to our listeners what the issues are and how it is that you're supporting it, because I'm getting a little bit of a background information here as we're speaking. But if we could first begin with the first issue with Chelsea Russell, with the quote unquote grossly offensive rap lyric that was an Instagram post. Can you tell us a little bit about a little background of it, and where that situation is, and what the liberalists are looking to do for this young lady?
So basically, here in the UK, for those who aren't aware, there is the Communications Act 2003, which attempts to criminalise offence within electronic communications. So it's section 127 of the Communications Act. 1A states that a person is breaking the law if they share by means of a public electronic communications network anything that could be deemed as grossly offensive. So public electronic communications network in 2003 would be emails, effectively. It's not the time of YouTube. These laws are already obsolete because we didn't have YouTube and social media in the same way as we do now back in 2003. Mm-hmm. Now, this law effectively has been a sleeper. We've not really seen much. It's not really been used for anything as such until we started, or that we're aware of, until we saw the Count Dankula case with the Nazi pug fiasco. Now, the Nazi pug thing, it was clearly a joke. There was clearly nothing. There was no hatred towards Jews or anything from Count Dankula at all. But at the same time, I could understand why some people might find Count Dankula abrasive, and so maybe not be so sympathetic towards him. However, Chelsea Russell is a 19-year-old girl, and she shared some lyrics by a rapper called Snapdog, and I think it was a drill rap song, if I remember correctly. The song's called "I'm Trippin'." And if I remember correctly, the lyrics were... Do you mind if I say this on air? Is that okay?
I would advise against it, considering you're currently in the UK.
Oh, of course I am. Killer, rich, N-word, robber, rich, N-word, blah, 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 blah. But the reason that she shared the lyrics on Instagram was because a young boy died in a motorcycle accident. If I remember correctly, he was 14 years old. And those lyrics were actually on his little about thing on Facebook and on Instagram. So he had them up, and because he liked the song, it was his favorite song at the time. And she was one of many people who shared these lyrics in tribute to this dead young man. The problem is where they shared the lyrics in their own private profile, she had her Instagram profile set to public. And because she had her Instagram profile set to public, she was deemed as breaking the law. So what happened was Funny enough, there was no civilian complainant. There was a police officer that found this, and then this police officer had to find an offended party, so they approached PC Dominique Walker within the Merseyside Police and showed her it, and she became the complainant that she was offended, and she heads up the racial hate unit in Merseyside, and her brother was killed in a racially motivated attack, from what I understand. So she has a personal reason to be offended by this. And basically, Chelsea was convicted to, I believe it was community service. She was also, I think, placed under house arrest for a while, if I remember correctly. But she's done. She's been prosecuted for sharing these lyrics. Now, she's got an appeal coming up in November, which we're aiming to attend. And I've been in contact with the lawyer, whose name is Carol Clark. And from what I understand, the defence they're going for, which, in my opinion, I don't think is the best way to go, but this is the way that she says that she has to do it. She has to find a urban music artist or expert in this field to state that the N-word has meanings beyond that of racism. Because unless she can prove that the N-word can mean anything other than something that is horrendous and racist and called back to slavery, Chelsea's still guilty.
Wow, that's quite some gymnastics happening there at the level of the law.
It's scary. It really, and it's funny. It's like, in the UK, you guys are dealing with this. The EU, you're dealing with this. The Canada, I don't think is far behind. And the US. The U.S. is getting to a point. So I'm going to share something with you guys. I didn't tell you this ahead of time. So I apologize, but I just want to get your guys' input on this. I think comedians and comedy are one of the most important art forms.
Damn right.
And Ricky Gervais, what he did on his last special was absolutely brilliant, and he got a ton of backlash for it. But I thought it was brilliant and unfortunately brave in this atmosphere, especially in the U.S. But also, the things that comedy and comedians are up against right now is the fear of losing everything in a day, in a tweet. And, people can say, oh, they're millionaires, whatever. It's really hard to lose everything that you've worked for your whole life because of a tweet or something you said that, was taken or misconstrued. So Norm Macdonald, are you guys familiar with Norm Macdonald?
Yeah.
The name's familiar. I can't remember the case, though.
Yeah, so today I saw this. It might be a couple days old, but Norm Macdonald was invited to the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And, NBC's been pretty good. Saturday Night Live, they've been pretty good on free speech. Lorne Michaels, Canadian. He's been pretty good, with this. But Norm Macdonald was disinvited from Jimmy Fallon the day of. He's in the green room, and he was told the producers were crying and people were crying and they couldn't handle the words that he had said. So he did an interview with Hollywood Reporter.
What?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. They go into detail on this, but he did an interview with the Hollywood Reporter where they asked him a bunch of political stuff. Now, Norm Macdonald's a funny guy. He's not very well informed. He says that, but he's funny. And so they asked him about Trump, and, he made a joke about Trump becoming president. And they asked him about racism in the era of Trump. And, this was his answer. I'm just going to read these two paragraphs. I'm going to get your guys' take on this and whether or not he should be disinvited from the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. So he says, the Hollywood Reporter asked, what about racism in the era of Trump? He says, I live in L.A. where I'm always faced with the lunacy of the left. I didn't know the same lunacy existed on the right. So I never really bought into this notion that everyone is a racist, because there was a black president, But the Sacha Baron Cohen show, I think that's This Is America, We Are America,
yeah.
Who is America, has been a frightening eye-opener. I was also in a bubble, but in a different way. I guess everyone is a fucking idiot. Everyone is an ideologue. Hopefully the pendulum will slow down in the next 4 years. And then they ask the follow-up that says, and swing back to liberalism, ? He says, not necessarily. I'm happy the #MeToo movement has slowed down a bit. It used to be 100 women can't be lying, then it became 1 woman can't lie, and then it became I believe all women. And then you're like, what? Like that Chris Hardwick guy, I really thought got the blunt end of the stick there. And the Chris Hardwick was the one that had the false MeToo that he proved. He proved out that it was a false thing. There was an investigation and stuff. It still really hurt his career. So those two paragraphs right there is the reason why he was disinvited from the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. What do you guys think about that?
It's nuts.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to me. And having witnessed what happened to Jian Ghomeshi here in Canada too, where like 3 separate women all came after him, and it was proven that all 3 of their allegations were made up completely.
Yeah,
Yet he lost his career over that.
Wow, I used to listen to him all the time on National Public Radio every single day, and to hear that's a follow-up to that, that those were complete false allegations.
And what Norm ended up doing is he did end up apologizing on Twitter today, and he said, look, the Me Too movement obviously is important. It absolutely is. That there's no doubt about it. There's been people that have been harassed, women have been harassed in the workplace, and things of that nature. And LA has been, really bad historically. And, but he does, but you still can't deny the point that there is overreach with some of these things. And everyone, it doesn't matter who should get, I think in my opinion, should get a fair trial. And I don't think that fair trial belongs in the social sphere. I don't think we should be, deeming people guilty or innocent on Twitter. Like, I really don't. I think there needs to be going through the formal process. And I think that's all Norm is trying to say, and yeah, it's scary. And like I said, producers were crying, and really scary time.
Yeah, no. If I can step in here, Ben. There's a really good book I've been reading about that recently called "So You've Been Publicly Shamed" by John Ronson.
Oh yeah,
he's the guy who wrote the Psychopath Test and The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yes.
He goes into a lot about how we've been publicly shaming a lot of public individuals lately, and where it's derived from, where the practice sort of started, and how we sort of moved away from it as a society back in like the 1900s. But now it seems the era of the internet, we've readopted it again. It's a scary time to live in. And I don't mean to fearmonger when I say this, but it's often said that, or at least I've heard it often said, that when Lenin first took over the USSR, the first thing he did on the night they took over was kill the comedian who made fun of them.
Yeah. It's extremely powerful. I've heard the same thing. It's extremely powerful. Once you take away the people's ability to criticize ideologies, you've lost your ability to grow, in my opinion.
So continuing with that idea of your inability or the inability to criticize ideas, Shane, you had mentioned the blasphemy laws in Ireland. Can you give us, that was the other piece that I was hoping you could educate our listeners to, and the work that the Liberalists are doing in that situation in Ireland?
Okay, so soon there is going to be a referendum on blasphemy laws in Ireland that have been on the books since, I believe, the mid-1800s, possibly earlier. I couldn't give you an exact date. We've been working closely with the Irish group to sort of put together a campaign of posters and activism in order to stand up against these laws, because they've been around a long time. No one in current day really sees a point to them. But needless to say, if you make a joke about the church or religion in general in Ireland, technically the laws are still on the book, such to the point where you could be arrested for it. I'm not sure what the maximum punishment is. I have to ask one of the representatives from Ireland on that, but it's ridiculous. And when you consider that applies to any religion, you just sort of look across the pond to some of the other British Isles where issues of Islam are an issue, and you say, well, if you can be punished for criticizing a religion, what's to stop them from being punished for criticizing Islam? And if that's the case, what future does Ireland have if radical Islam starts taking over there? If this law isn't struck down, they're going to be in a lot of trouble in like 20 to 30 years.
What's the pushback like? Do you have legislators or individuals kind of laughing at you with the excuse of, oh, that's not worth our time fighting because it's not really, we don't really enforce that law, so we just won't waste our time with it? Or do you have individuals that are really fighting tooth and nail to make sure that the blasphemy laws stay?
I think at large, like public support seems to be like fairly split on it. Right now, I think a lot of people don't see the purpose of it, but I mean, Ireland is a very, very openly Catholic place. So, well, I mean, certain parts of Ireland are very openly Catholic. Others are not
Catholic
so much.
Church, Catholic Church has a stronghold in Ireland. That's scary too. I mean, look at the criticisms, or at least the critiques, for sure, of their policies on how to handle child abuse. I mean, does that become a blasphemy law if you start criticizing, and if someone like Ricky Gervais or a comedian starts poking fun at that? I mean, that's where that conversation needs to start.
It's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
No, I was going to say it's with the Catholic Church as well. There was like it's not just the issues in Ireland with the child abuse stuff. There was also like I remember there was one case when there was a septic tank that was filled with corpses of children and things that had been chucked in there. In this it was I think it was a home for the troubled sort of people or something like that. It was a like mental health home or something like that. But the problem is with Ireland is the blasphemy laws and things, they aren't enforced so much now. I mean, they're the Irish have relaxed a lot over the years. The problem is if they don't, as you were saying, that if with the Catholic Church and stuff, if they don't sort of realise the potential risks of these laws in future, then they will be used against them. Luckily, over here in England, we abolished these laws back in the I think 70s or 80s, and the last time someone was prosecuted for them was the 60s, and it was a served sentence, if I remember correctly. I think it was imprisonment. So,
wow, that's sad. It's unbelievable. And the more you know, right? You guys, we are so happy to have you guys coming to Milwaukee and being represented. And, I was curious, when you guys are working on that blasphemy laws in Ireland, definitely keep us posted. We know some people in Ireland, at least from the atheist standpoint, that would definitely support that. But yeah, we look forward to having you guys there. And I just want to make sure, is there anything else that you guys want to share before we close out?
If there's time and if it's possible, there is a video we've been working very hard on recently that is sort of an introduction to our organization.
Sure, that'd be great. And just as long as you know how to do it on your end, because obviously
yep. Let me get it queued up here.
Okay, great.
So, here we go. If I can to screen share this. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
It's all right.
We were muted for like 5
Let me just try and
worries on that at all.
These guys sound like egalitarians. I can't deal with them.
I was really upset with Jimmy Fallon and his staff, so I'm not kidding. Like that really upset me.
Yeah, well, so why were the producers crying? Because of what was said, or because he couldn't go on?
Because of what he said. Because of the meeting.
So they were crying because of the statement.
Yeah, they were crying because.
I thought they were crying because the producers were being bullied into not allowing.
I would have told Jimmy Fallon, I'd say, the time I cried is actually when you ruined every goddamn skit you were on Saturday Night Live, including.
All right, can you gentlemen see the video in question?
Yes.
Yep, you're good.
Alrighty, I hope we have audio, but we'll see. Here we go.
There's no audio.
Oh, okay. That's unfortunate.
Welcome to our world.
In which case, we'll have the video up on the YouTube channel shortly. I'll have you a link to that shortly. But
okay, for sure. And we'll definitely share it on our end. Guys, it's been truly a pleasure meeting you guys, and again, partnering with you for this. And we hope MythCon. We hope you guys enjoy it. I think you definitely will. We definitely share the same principles in sharing viewpoint diversity and supporting free speech and not getting offended and crying over silly jokes. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Can I ask just any Twitter handles that you would like to share? Any website that you would like to share, even if it's for the main group or any of the individual partners?
So when it comes down to me, you can find me at @thatbenguy UK, and you can find the Liberalists UK Twitter at Liberalists UK, and that will be you'll see a stag logo with a flame above it.
For the Liberalists International, we have a website, www.liberalistsIA.com. There's also the Twitter @LiberalistIA. And we have a Facebook group as well, Liberalist International Association. Feel free to look us up. We'd be happy to see any new members who are interested in our principles, what we have to say there.
Awesome.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you.
I got to give one shout out to someone in the chat that said Norm will always have, it was Gaius Machinus. You will always have some spots in the Adam Sandler movies. That's true, but the Adam Sandler movies have been declining so bad. So I mean, like, so bad. Who even watched the last one on Netflix? I mean, I did because, you know, whatever. It was terrible, but hilarious.
The last one I watched was Click. That was the last one I watched.
Right. What was that, like 2008?
Something like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, bring Monty Python back.
Yeah, bring Monty Python back. Guys, thanks again for joining us, and stay on the line, everyone else. We're not going to be streaming until MythCon is over. We have to take a break here, and obviously we have audio issues, so we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.